Hey guys, Matt here. This is my review of The Hobbit, An Unexpected Journey. This movie is directed by Peter Jackson, who of course previously directed the first Lord of the Rings trilogy, and this movie stars Martin Freeman, Ian McKellen, and Richard Armitage. Now let me say right off the bat that I didn't read the book The Hobbit, so I can't be one of those people going into this movie, comparing it to the book and nitpicking at things they left out or happy at things they put in. So the only thing I can really compare this to is the animated movie The Hobbit, or the other Lord of the Rings trilogy, because that's the only thing that I know that resembles this movie. Now, I did see this movie with people that had never seen the other trilogy, but I'm like, you know what, that's not a bad thing, because The Hobbit is the beginning of it all. I'll give you some quick backstory. When Lord of the Rings first came out in the theaters, I didn't see them, only because they didn't come off as things that I had to go see. And then when they came out on DVD, my friend let me borrow them, and I watched them. And I've even rewatched them about 3 or 4 months ago, and my opinion is the same, is that they're good, but they're not the best things I've ever seen in my life. With this franchise, you're going to have fans that love it to death, and then you're going to have people that think it's slow and boring and dumb. I'm right in the middle. So I saw The Hobbit, and to quote Peter Wallace, here's my little review on it. It was good, but it was not great. And I think the reason for that is, for a 3-hour-long movie, I found it slow and unfortunately hokey at times. Now, it did have good parts here and there, and parts that surprised me, but unfortunately, the only really good part to me was the last half hour. And for a 3-hour-long movie, that's not good. It did have the Lord of the Rings feel, and it did have Peter Jackson's stamp on it, but I'm glad this is the first part in the new trilogy. Let me start with the acting in this movie. Martin Freeman as a younger Bilbo Baggins, perfect. Perfect. He just, much like Ewan McGregor played a young Obi-Wan and got all of his mannerisms and his speaking and everything about him down, Martin Freeman got the young Bilbo Baggins down perfectly. It's great. Ian McKellen as Gandalf, flawless. He didn't skip a beat whatsoever. They're like, hey, Ian McKellen, you're going to be playing Gandalf again. He's like, oh my. Perfect. Richard Armitage as Thorin Oakenshield. He was the really good, pleasant surprise in this movie. His character was like, the toughness and badassness of Aragorn from the other movies, but the way he came off and his attitude was much like Boromir as well. So he was like cool and fought great, but he's kind of a jerk. Now, the other dwarves, there were 13 of them, so unfortunately with this movie you couldn't give them all ample screen time, so they merely focused on about 3 or 4 others. They all had their own personalities, but it was like, because they were always clustered in a group, they just came off like the 7 dwarves, where like every situation they were in happened to all of them. So, it's like if you had one dwarf hanging from a rope, you'd have 2 or 3 of them hanging from a rope. So, it got kind of repetitive at times. Now, that's not to say that they're fumbly and silly and everything, but it's like every once in a while, they'll show this one again, or they'll show this one, just in case, audiences forgot about one of them. They all give them, they all have their own different personalities. You have an older one, a fat one that's like a warrior that's, war-torn and stuff. They're all different, but they don't give them all ample screen time, and they don't go too in-depth with them. They don't give them backstory or anything. They just show you, hey, there's 13 of them, and they're all different, so that was good. Also, one of the downsides of this movie is, I'm not going to give anything away, but this movie has other characters from the Lord of the Rings trilogy in it. And to me, I kind of felt like, much like the Star Wars prequels, where, yeah, they were like, okay, we're going to try to make our own separate story here, but we're going to throw in a couple characters and elements and events and things that people that have seen the other movies can kind of familiarize with and go, oh, I see what they're doing here. That's kind of what they did in this movie. Now, I haven't read the book, like I said, so I don't know what is inside the story. But to me, it just kind of felt like I don't want to say a cheap cash-in, but it just kind of felt like, I don't know, it is too much for me. It was one thing, having Ian Holm come back as old Bilbo, but then when you introduce this character, and then they go to visit this character, and then this character appears, it's kind of like, alright guys, get more on the story itself. Now, there were 2 things in this movie that really impressed me. One of them was the shots and the camera angles. For example, there's a scene where they all get captured, all the dwarves get taken away, but Hobbit, stays behind. He sneaks his way, to the back of the group. So they all get taken away, and Bilbo is left behind. And there's a scene where Bilbo's looking and his comrades get taken away, and there's a scene where there's this hole in this loop in like this sword or some metal thing, and Bilbo's looking at his comrades, but the shot that they use is of Bilbo's eye through that hole in the thing. And I was just like, wow, that's a really cool shot. So that and a couple others, I don't want to make this review too long, just really made me go, well, that was pretty cool. Another thing that I liked, that really impressed me, was the CGI, the special effects. There were so many moments in this movie, like Smeagol, where I was like, okay, in the other ones you could clearly point out the CGI and the special effects and some of the characters and actions, but in this one, it's great. It's like, is that CGI? No. But it looks so real. That's not CGI, is it? Really good special effects in this movie. Now, here's the downside of this movie, or one of them, I guess, is unlike the original trilogy, this movie really doesn't have that many quotable lines. It doesn't really have that many references. Because, yeah, there's, some monologues, and there's some, tough guy talk from Thorin and Gandalf in them, but it's just like, if you were to go, hey, give me one of the lines from The Hobbit, and don't use ones from the trailer, the thing that kind of hurt this movie for me was the music. In the original movies, you had different songs played by different instruments. You had a theme for Lord of the Rings, of course, but then you had, these awesome, emotional, beautiful pieces of music. One was even, I think, nominated for like an Oscar. But in this movie, it was like they just stuck with the Lonely Mountain theme. It's like they sang it once, and then they would use that tune throughout the movie. And besides the epic song at the end of the movie, they just reused Lonely Mountain song. It was kind of like, you can't, it's a different setting, so why are you going to use the same music? But anyways, that just threw me off. I mean, this is the first part in trilogy, so come the other two movies, they may have different themes and different songs. So, I'm hoping for that. Another thing is, for this movie, I found a lot of the moments to be, like, silly. And when I say silly, I mean, I'm just picturing, like Indiana Jones 4 type silly, where it's like, not once in any of the action scenes, except for at the end, and during all the, the fights and the danger, I was never like, oh my gosh, they might not all make it. They might die. I never felt like that. I was always like, okay, I know they're going to live. Maybe one or two of them might get killed off, but there's 13 of them. So I was never really emotionally engaged with none of the dwarves. And another bad thing is this movie is about Bilbo Baggins. And it's like, okay, they introduced his character, and he came off as this snooty guy, that's selfish and everything. And for a good portion of the movie, he's gone. They just focus on other things. They don't go back to Bilbo. So it's kind of really hard to see, like in the other movies, the strain that this journey was taking on Frodo. In this one, it was kind of hard to really sympathize with Bilbo, except for, his part with Smeagol in the cave with the riddles was really cool, and his part at the end was emotional and engaging. But other than that, it was like, okay, here's Bilbo. Okay, we're going to focus on these, battles that aren't that great, and the dwarves, and backstory, and okay, yeah, here's Bilbo again. Let's focus more about him. That's, in summary, what this movie was like. Granted, again, this is the first movie in a trilogy. So my thing might be that, like the great show The Wire and other really good shows, it'll take, an episode or two to, get into and to get really good. So I think that's the case with this trilogy. So from a rating of 1 to a 5, because this movie was an unexpected journey, but it wasn't exactly what I was hoping for. From a rating of 1 to a 5, I'm going to give The Hobbit 3.5, 4 at the most. Because when I left this movie, when people ask me how was it, I told them it was slow. It was slow, and I told them the ending makes up for it, and it really does. And, again, with a 3-hour-long movie, that's not always a good thing. So don't let my opinion sway you guys. If you're huge fans of the series or just fans that want to get into Lord of the Rings, check this movie out. So until next time, guys, see ya.